Good evening, everybody. Uneducated Economist. So I tried to come down here and get you guys a sunset, but there's no sunset today. You're just going to get clouds. But I thought I'd talk a little bit about silver and gold today, and or at least my experience with silver. I guess it started back in 2007 when my kid was born. People would hand me money, and they would say, "Hey, man, this is for the kid. This is for diapers and formula and all the other stuff that goes along with having a kid, because having a kid's expensive." And I would take that money and I would put it in an envelope because I was making okay money at the time, and I didn't really need this money that people were giving me. And I thought, man, this is great. I would just save this for my kid. And I knew I had to do something with this money because I would lose it to inflation, but not knowing anything about the Federal Reserve or stocks or bonds or anything that's like related to investments, I didn't know what to do. And a buddy of mine says, "Well, have you ever considered buying silver bullion?" It's just like, well, no, because I don't know anything about anything. And he says, like, "Well, there's a dealer downtown, there's a coin dealer, and he sells silver bullion. You should go down there and buy a piece or two." So I did. I went down there and I bought a couple of pieces, and he really knew what he was doing when he did that, because what it does is once you buy a single piece, you start researching a little bit, and that just sets the ball rolling for opening your mind up to how the monetary policies work out there. And he ended up giving me The Creature from Jekyll Island, the book The Creature from Jekyll Island, and that really sealed the deal. Now, I'm not very good at reading books or reading in general as far as long, page after page, but I think I probably read every page in that book over time. So after he gave me The Creature from Jekyll Island, I just kept buying silver. Once a week I would go down and buy 2, 3, 4 pieces of silver at a time. And I did that until I had 100 ounces of silver for the kid. And I set that aside, and I kept buying. And I ended up, after a few years, after about 7 years or so, I had lost my job. It was really hard, difficult to try and find employment out there. I was like going deeply into debt. I had exhausted all my savings, and it was just a really bad time. And we started drinking a lot, going into depression, ourselves, like me and my wife. And then she says, "Hey, I'm pregnant again." So it's like, oh, great. And so we ended up losing the house, and luckily for me, my family had a house that was available for me to move into. And so I moved into that house, but it didn't really help with like the depression and, being in debt and stuff. I told her, like, "Hey, don't go to work. We're going to try and raise this kid, a little bit with just, you staying home, and I'll go to work, and we'll just make ends meet as much as we can." And that was a really bad idea, because we just went even deeper into debt. And then the car breaks down, and it was just like, great, man, now what? Now what am I going to do? And so I went to that box of silver, and through all the crap and losing the house and going into debt and all that other stuff, I still had that box of silver, and I had never touched it. I never touched the 100 ounces that I bought for my kid, and I had plenty to pull out and trade for a car. And I tell you, it is a bummer of a feeling when you open up that box of silver, when you're forced to, and you're pulling out tubes, and you're handing it over, and that guy signs that title, and he hands it back to you. You're like, holy crap, did that just happen? Did I just buy a car with silver bullion? Cool. Now, it was at $17.50 an ounce I did that deal. I've recently gotten, not recently, actually, I bought it back a while ago, but I got it back for under the price that I had sold it for. So in the end, it worked out okay for me. And that's the way I look at silver. It's my insurance policy. It's not my get rich quick. It's not even get rich in the end scheme, right? It's not anything to do with that. It's my, here, this is how you can sleep at night. This is how you can save money for the future. This is something that you can buy that you're not going to just go willy-nilly spending. That's going to be something that you can have in the future. And every once in a while, if an emergency comes up, guess what? You can open up that box. Open up that box and hand over some silver and deal with your emergency. A lot of people can't say that. And the few people that I know who buy silver, who actively, they don't have big savings accounts. They don't have massive portfolios and stuff, but they do have a reasonable amount of silver, and they don't really care what the price is, and they don't look at it as something that they're going to have that's going to go to $1 million in the future. It's their insurance. It's what allows them to sleep at night and not worry. Anyway, thought I would share this with you. So the other day, Peter Schiff was on a news interview on Russia Today talking about the gold standard and the possibility of going back to a gold standard. Anyway, he said in that interview, anybody who has not read Alan Greenspan's Gold and an Economic Freedom, they really ought to go read it. And so I went and read it, and he's right. Anybody who hasn't read that, you really ought to go check it out. It's a very quick read. I mean, it took me like, an hour to read it, but I had to read it 4 times to understand it. So, because I have a reading comprehension problem, which is surprising, right, guys? But anyway, the last 2 paragraphs of that are very telling, and I thought I would read this to you. It goes like this. It goes, in the absence of a gold standard, there is no way to protect savings from confiscation through inflation. There is no safe store of value. If there were, the government would have to make its holdings illegal, as was done in the case of gold. If everyone decided, for example, to convert all his bank deposits to silver or copper or any other good, and thereafter declined to accept checks as payments for goods, bank deposits would lose their purchasing power and the government-created bank credit would be worthless as a claim on goods. The financial policies of the welfare state requires that there be no way for the owners of wealth to protect themselves. This is the shabby secrets of the welfare statist tirades against gold. Deficit spending is simply a scheme for the confiscation of wealth. Gold stands in the way of this insidious process. It stands as a protector of property rights. If one grasps this, one has no difficulty in understanding the statist antagonisms towards the gold standard. Sorry guys, it's a little chilly out here, so I'm having a hard time forming my words. But that is very telling to me. See, Alan Greenspan, although no matter what you think about Alan Greenspan, I mean good or bad or indifferent about him, he was a hardcore gold bug back in the 60s. Very much so. And during his time as the chairman of the Federal Reserve, you would not believe that for a second that this guy was a hardcore gold bug. Now there's plenty of theory out there that they are trying to crash this system and go back to a gold standard. And if you have ever seen Bix Weir's work, Road to Ruta, he has gone into it extensively. Now whether that's going to be the case or is the case, it certainly seems pretty likely considering the things that Alan Greenspan was saying about the gold standard. Now, if you got that part, there's no way to protect yourself from the confiscation through inflation. And then, so you have to have something. You have to have something out there, or else they're just going to inflate the money away. But what I found the most intriguing part about this was, when he's talking about there is no safe haven, there is no safe store of value. If there were, the government would have to make its holdings illegal. So isn't it funny right now how all these politicians out there are talking about banning Bitcoin? Uneducated economist. You guys let me know.